So we have rabid, hardcore Trump supporters who are now threatening openly a judge in one of the cases against him and a bunch of the grand jurors who indicted him again. Okay, so now, by the way, we just discussed this story. I'm going to bring this up one more time. When you ask Trump supporters, who do you believe? Trump is number one on that list. More than friends, more than family, more than conservative media, more than religious leaders. Trump is number one on that list. By a lot, by the way. So it is kind of cultish. I think that's a fair descriptor in this instance. I think it's an objective descriptor. So these are the people that we're dealing with in this instance, okay? And then look at some of the specifics. So this is from Ryan J. Riley, who's an NBC News reporter. He says, in extremely unsurprising news, a racist Trump fan has been charged with threatening Judge Chutkan. Quote, "Hey, you stupid slave," she allegedly said, before referring to Chutkan using the N-word. "You are in our sights. We want to kill you. If Trump doesn't get elected in 2024, we are coming to kill you, so tread lightly, bitch. You will be targeted personally, publicly, your family, all of it." Now, understand something. The way that the First Amendment works and is interpreted is we have free speech, but a direct threat of violence or incitement to violence. It's not protected speech. It's not protected speech. Now, I'm sure they were visited by some law enforcement officials. These people, or the person who was threatening, was visited by some law enforcement officials. They will determine and adjudicate whether or not this crosses that line, because usually a direct threat of violence has to be specific. Is this specific enough is the question. But suffice to say, we know the sentiment that's floating around in these circles. And when it comes to Trump, let's not kid ourselves. He is purposefully and repeatedly targeting these people, and he knows what his own fans have the potential to do. In the same way that he spoke out of both sides of his mouth, but he egged on everybody leading up to January 6th. It's going to be wild. Everybody come. It's going to be a wild, wild event. We need to go to the Capitol. Let's go to the Capitol. Let's go with strength. You can only take your country back with strength. Let's be strong. He knows what he's doing, and he doesn't care. If anything, he wants to use this and leverage it to his advantage by saying, hey, if you lock me up, a lot of bad things are going to happen. Maybe it's good for the country. You don't want to rip the country apart, do you, by coming after me for when I commit a million crimes? Breaking. Trump supporters are targeting members of the Fulton County grand jury that indicted Trump and his 18 co-defendants. One post on a fringe website even featured their home addresses. Look, I think it's part of the law in Georgia that in this instance, so they released, the indictment, and I think the grand jurors' names as under law was released with it. I don't know if it was that or a mistake. I think it is part of the law in Georgia, but let me be the first to say I don't think it should be. I don't think it should be. Because with this high-profile case and how high the stakes are, these people now have a target on their backs. All because they did their job, they listened to the evidence, and they indicted. Now they're being threatened. And by the way, I don't want to get into too many of the specifics, but this is on 4chan here. They're threatening violence against the grand jurors. And one person says that they're about ready to go Turner Diaries on these people. That's the white supremacist screed. This is what we're dealing with now, man. This is what we're dealing with now. And again, I want to reiterate this. Trump knows that this is likely going to be the reaction. He's egging these people on, and he wants to leverage this to try to get away with everything he did. I really hope that these people all have protection. I don't think the grand jurors do. I know the judge does. Have U.S. Marshals flanking them 24/7. There was a story the other day about how she went to go get a cup of coffee and she had to be flanked by U.S. Marshals. Jack Smith, too. I hope he has a bunch of support and defense, and he's surrounded by law enforcement officials. And I got to be honest with you guys, we ain't seen nothing yet. I think it's going to get a lot worse. Now, the only, honestly, silver lining in this whole situation is that a lot of Trump supporters felt burned by January 6th. That hundreds of people have now gone down on various crimes because they stormed the Capitol and because they did property damage and all that stuff. And so a lot of the Trump supporters feel like everything is a Fed trap. And even in this thread in 4chan, there was somebody who was like, you idiots, you're all going to get arrested and this is like a Fed trap or whatever. There's some talk internally about that. So I do think they're less likely to show up in large groups in person. to do these things because they don't want to have it get out of hand and then they get taken down on some crime, just like what happened on January 6th. So that's the only silver lining. But at the same time, you got to fear for these grand jurors and their safety, and you got to fear for the judge and her safety, that all it takes is one psychopath. That's all it takes. One psychopath. We've seen it coming from a mile away. Trump knew it was coming from a mile away. He facilitated it, and now we're going to have to deal with the fallout. And like I said, you think it's bad now? You ain't seen nothing yet. Hey, y'all, do me a favor and like and subscribe. It helps out big time in the algorithm. Click the bell as well for notifications when videos drop, and watch that video on screen right now. You know you want to.